On a Sunday in mid-April 1989, I was traveling back to my house from a trade show at a resort. As I drove, I reflected on the gorgeous early spring day, with the leaves on the trees just starting to peak. The weather was lovely, with temps hovering about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I was on the highway heading north. On the radio was a fantastic song, though I can't remember what it was, and I was relieved to be coming home after working the trade show that weekend. I had been asked to be a groomsman in a longtime friend's wedding that weekend, but my supervisor stated I couldn't. I was bummed about missing the wedding and not seeing my friend, but he was never far from my mind that day. As I drove, I was thinking that my friend would be at the reception around that time, and I was wondering how the service went. On a dirt road, I noticed an automobile approaching the highway, a double-lane divided highway from the west. I observed the automobile cross the southbound lanes of traffic and drive into the median, nearing the stop sign that directed cars on that small road to come to a halt before continuing across the northbound lanes. In retrospect, I saw that the car had never stopped at the stop sign before driving across the southbound lanes of traffic. Rather than pausing at the stop sign before driving across the northbound lanes of traffic, which were the ones I was in at the time, the automobile continued straight through the stop sign, directly into my path. Looking back on the experience, it's strange how one's perspectives change under such duress. In my mind, the car was a massive mid-70s Lincoln Town car. I was driving a considerably smaller vehicle. In investigating the cause of this misunderstanding, the car was actually not a massive car, but rather a mid-sized mid-80s mid-size Oldsmobile. I discovered that the car was so close that my mind mistook it for a large model. I did, however, get the color exactly right. It was a bright green. Everything slowed to the speed of slow motion. I uttered or imagined an expletive. I still believe I uttered it, but given how little time I had in this field, I supposed my mind was running so fast that I just assumed I shouted that expletive. My right hand, I believe, pushed the shifter backward. It was an automatic, but like most American cars, that movement caused the transmission to drop to a lower gear when the speed became adequate. At the same time, I made a sharp left turn with the steering wheel as the green car was traveling from my left to my right. If I just hit this car in the rear axle, it will spin the car on the front axle out of my way, and maybe we, the elderly guy driving the car and the elderly woman in the passenger seat, both of whom I could plainly see, will live through this event, I remember thinking. My mind processed an image of them in a car spinning on its front axle, then an image of them in a car being struck dead center at the passenger door by my automobile. Other than the wind, I don't recall hearing anything else. That's extremely strange, I thought. Where is the wind gone? Okay, there won't be any sound until the cars collide, I reasoned. Then I began to wonder why my car was not turning. I twisted the wheel sharply to the left with my hand, but nothing happened. As the automobiles approached, I understood there was nothing I could do to influence the result of this event. I was only there for a moment, and it was going to happen all around me. That was the first and last time in my life that I'd come to that realization. I watched as the folks in the other car got closer and closer, first by a few feet, then by inches. The man was peering through the windscreen. I thought she was talking to him because the woman was turned slightly towards him. She was holding what appeared to be a little transistor radio in her right hand, near her right ear. I haven't seen a radio like that since maybe 1971 or so, I thought. Then there was contact, and I heard the sound of a crash, and the vision of the other persons was immediately blocked by steam from my car's radiator bursting. I recall thinking to myself, that's what it was. My automobile began to slowly spin westward. Because of the steam, I couldn't see anything, and I remember thinking, all I really need is for a tractor trailer to drive into us with this going on. Wouldn't it be nice to see that one coming? Then I reasoned that because the wind was blowing from the west and my automobile was spinning from north to west, once it reached a point where it was facing southwest, the steam would most likely no longer obstruct my eyesight, When the automobile wheeled about to face the southwest, the steam was carried out of my range of view, and I could see down the highway from the direction I'd just come from. Man, I'm glad there isn't a truck bearing down on us, I recall thinking. My automobile then came to a halt. When I realized my automobile had stopped moving, I said, "Man, I've got to get out of here." I recall my head bowed and my chin striking my chest, followed by a loud poofing sound. The best way I can describe the sound is when you lock your lower lip behind your upper teeth and then blow your lip back into normal place. Foofing. I remember feeling foofed, as if I were a spit wad being hastily forced through a straw. I could hear and feel the foofing. For want of a better phrase, the elevation seemed about correct, and I seemed to be oriented basically vertically to the rest of the world, close to the driver's door of my automobile. Hey, that's me, and I'm a bit of a mess, I thought as I looked at the guy sitting there. It's not too horrible, though, because nothing appears to have been pulled from the body. Everything appears to be in place, but it's dead. I'd been working in a funeral home for about a year and a half and was pretty familiar with bodies and how they seem when they're no longer alive. I turned around when I heard a voice behind me. There, standing, still, for the lack of a better description, were two of my friends who had died in a vehicle accident in 1983. They were killed together, which was fitting given their inseparability, and the three of us were closer than brother and sister. I attended to both funerals and vowed to myself that if I died, those two ladies would come to collect me, if that's how it was done. They were indeed present. The amazing thing, looking back, was that I wasn't astonished to find them there. I recalled saying, for lack of a better word, but I believe I said, "Hey Lisa, hey Susan," casually, as if I'd just met them at the student union during a break in courses. I started telling Lisa about my body. "Hey Lisa, get a load of this," I replied, amused by the circumstance, and pointed towards myself, sat in the car. I recall a sense of complete and full freedom. There are no words to express how I felt, but it occurred to me that in my current state, I could do anything I wanted, go anywhere, and no laws of physics governed what I could accomplish. I realized I could go to the Eiffel Tower if I wanted. That's my exact idea, although I don't recall ever wanting to go to the Eiffel Tower or even thinking about it previous to this, other than perhaps to answer a question on a 5th grade geography class quiz. I began to enjoy my current state of well-being, which I still miss. "Brian, you must pay close attention." Did she say there isn't much time, or was it merely thought-implied information? "You must look," Lisa added, pointing, or rather directing my attention in some other way. Difficult it's to articulate exactly how talking, moving, standing, etc. is done in this state, to the western horizon. I saw that almost everything in the world has muted, like a television that wasn't receiving good reception, and that the black and white was periodically interrupted by a blob of color, but it was mostly black and white. My life, on the other hand, was in the skies. It was like seeing it on a movie screen, or widescreen in color, on a video cassette recorder stuck in fast forward. But instead of just seeing it, I felt like I was in the scene and standing with Lisa and Suzanne. My life literally lasted from my birth to my death. I was left to create an opinion about life at the end of this life screen experience. At that very instant, I realized there had been previous lives. I had gone through identical or similar reviews when they were completed, but I was not interested in these past lives since they were done, and I had concluded them, leaving them of no further relevance. I realized that now that it was over, this life would be meaningless. I realized I was all-knowing. There were no questions. All knowledge was readily available in my mind. For example, I was aware that everything created in whatever condition was a component of a much larger concept. This was simply some information that I recollect, but I was able to explore that vast concept from the inside and be a part of everything while thinking about it, just when I thought of it. Isn't this perplexing? I realized this was my true condition of being. As I now discovered myself, I was a creature or being who had exploited the lifeless piece of meat inside the automobile for some time. I did feel sad for my body, though, not being of any longer use. It seemed like a waste, yet it had served me well. This is similar to how you feel when you trade in your car. None of this seemed to take long in our time, perhaps 20 seconds. All of this occurred to me, was considered, and transpired in that period of time. You must listen, Lisa said, or rather communicated. You have accomplished enough that you can travel with us. She hesitated. Or you can stay. But if you stay, you must know why, and you must tell us. You must understand that if you stay, it'll be really difficult. I have to stay, I stated unequivocally. Why? Lisa inquired. I don't have any children yet, I explained. This was significant, but not emotional. Rather, like a house. I was meant to paint and did so, but it had begun to rain and I was telling someone that I still needed another day to paint around the windows. Susan said nothing during this, only Lisa. I observed that there was someone else beyond Susan. I noticed that this person was paying close attention and that I was not permitted to view him or her. This being emerged only as a massive presence, visible only as waves of distortion, veiled from my consciousness such that I couldn't see him or her directly. As an example, consider the film Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and pay attention to how the alien appears when it's cloaked. That was the effect I was noticing. I wasn't threatened by this, and I don't want to influence the reader by using my movie example of a dreadful, cutthroat alien, but I did want to draw attention to the visual distortion used. There was no sense of danger, merely a recognition of this presence. All right. You should know that your heart stopped when you hit the steering wheel, but you will not be permanently injured as a result of this, Lisa stated. You have a broken sternum, a cut on your finger, and a couple of teeth knocked out. All right, I said. And then I heard poof. Everything was black, and I was perplexed at first. I couldn't figure out where I was at all. Then I heard what sounded like a distant boom. Then there was silence, followed by another explosion. Then another, closer together. Then I heard a heartbeat sound, followed by another, and realized that the booming was my heart beginning to beat. Why, that's my heart starting, I recall thinking. Then it dawned on me that I desperately needed a breath of fresh air. Think being deep underwater and not knowing if you'll make it to the surface before running out of air. Now imagine how it would feel to learn you didn't make it to the surface before running out of air. That feeling. I took the longest, deepest gasping breath I've ever taken. When it was finished, I opened my eyes and looked around, noticing my hands start to bleed. I'm not going to get into specifics of the accident, but I kept drifting in and out of consciousness. I could hear people conversing, but couldn't seem to respond. People have touched my neck at least 3 times and remarked, "This one's gone." When I finally raised my head and said something to a state trooper who was leaned down on my car's driver's door, copying my VIN number off my dash, he sprang back and exclaimed, "Hey, this one's alive, get over here." I recall being in my car with an emergency medical technician and feeling vibration from extraction equipment. I recall pointing a television camera at myself and saying, "Get that effing camera out of my face." I recall being in an ambulance with a female emergency medical technician, seated next to me on a bench. "Where exactly are we?" I remember asking her. "You're in an ambulance," she said. "No, where exactly are we on the road?" I replied. "How far is it from the city?" "I'm afraid I've no way of knowing. There's only a small window," she explained. "That's fine. I'll go out and look," I remember replying. I remember driving into the side of the ambulance and seeing a raw quarry that I used to use as a reference when noting that we were almost there. I returned via the ambulance's side and told her, "We're almost to the rock quarry." "Good. We're almost there." "Oh, I see. Yeah. But how?" replied the emergency medical technician, as she stood up and walked to a small window on the side of the ambulance. When she sat down, she didn't finish that statement, nor did she say anything else other than, "You just lay calm. You're almost there. You look considerably better than you did a while ago," the emergency medical technician from inside the automobile said later in the hospital department. I told him I was feeling better. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never checked somebody and been wrong about whether they were living or dead until now, he stated. "Who says you were wrong?" I asked. He had appeared anxious before, but now he grinned and said, "You be cool, man," before walking away. A nurse inquired if I had any medical experience, because I had informed everyone at the scene and in the emergency room that I had a broken sternum, a cut on my finger, and that I would lose 2 teeth. I informed her that I did not work in the medical field. I was recovering from a broken sternum, a cut on my hand, and a pair of root canals on my teeth. However, I had a lot of difficulties sleeping while I was in the hospital. I could feel myself float out of my body every time I started to doze off, and I realized I believed I was dying again, and I knew I was supposed to stay, so I would wake myself up.